All right, everybody, we're going to get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lexi Barrett, and I am the president of the Women in the School of Accountancy Club, where we seek to not only expand the professional network of the women in the program, but also to show women who aren't in the program the value that accounting can add in their lives. And I just want to, first of all, thank everyone that joined us today, especially our panelists, as they are taking time out of their busy days to talk with us. So we're really grateful for that. Before we get started, I just want to tell the objective we have of this webinar. So the purpose is twofold. We're hoping that for our pre-management or prospective accounting students that we show the value accounting can add in not only your personal life, but also your careers as well. And for our participants that are currently in the accounting major, we hope that you can learn from the experiences of these women and see the opportunities you have available to you because you have chose accounting. So with that being said, I am now going to pass it over to Angela, who's going to get us started.
Well, welcome everyone. We're so thankful that you've joined us, and hopefully the next hour or just a little shy of that will provide you more insights as to as you embark on that journey to make your decision about what you want to do with your very bright future that's ahead of you. And so with that, I think what we're going to do is have Jen, Jodi, and I provide you with a little bit of background about us, and so that you understand what paths a career can take. And then we'll go deeper into some of the questions that were pre-submitted prior to this webinar, and then we'll also take questions. As it says there, you can submit questions into the chat box within Zoom. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to the East Coast, if that's where Jodi is today, and have her explain her career, her background, her career path, and life experiences.
All right, thanks, Angela. So I'm on Central Time today. I am sitting in the PwC office in Houston, Texas. I thought about cleaning things up before we did this, but I thought, you might want to see the mess that I work in the middle of busy season. So just a quick introduction. My name is Jodi Probst. I'm a partner at PwC. I'm currently the managing partner of our Houston office, and quickly approaching my 25th anniversary with PwC, which makes this my 24th and a half busy season. I've spent most of my career in our audit practice, where I mostly work with large multinational oil and gas companies. I'm not originally from Houston, but I've moved here 3 times, and I've lived here, I think if I did the math right, more years than I've lived anywhere else, so it's home to me now. I first moved to Houston to start my career with PwC right after college. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, Beatrice, Nebraska, population 12,000 and a couple of people. 1 Walmart and about 6 stoplights. So leaving the small town and going to the big city of Omaha, which really not that big if you've been there. I went to Creighton University for, I was not sure what I wanted to do. I was the first person in my family to go to college, so I really didn't know what to expect or what to do. But I had a scholarship to the business school, so I figured I would go there and just figure out what I was going to do next. Eventually I landed on accounting, partly because at the time, the economy was not that great, and I think 99.9% of the last 4 years of accounting students had gotten jobs, and so that seemed like a wise plan for me to follow, and it turned out to be a fantastic decision. One of the best decisions I've ever made, maybe second to choosing my husband, but somewhere in there. And then for some unknown reason, the PwC Houston office used to come all the way to Omaha to recruit. So they had a genius marketing ploy. They flew us down for interviews the week before Thanksgiving. So I remember very well leaving Omaha. It was 17 degrees outside. And flew down to Houston, where it was 72 degrees, the sun was shining, the air was dry. I thought it was just the most wonderful place on earth, until I actually moved to Houston in August. And if any of you have been to Houston in August, it's not the place you want to be. carrying everything I owned up 3 flights of stairs into my apartment. It was like 98 degrees outside and 110% humidity. But once I got used to that, I really enjoyed Houston. My husband and I got married right after graduation, and so he moved here with me. And after we'd been in Houston about 5 years, we had the opportunity to move to Perth, Australia. My audit client in Houston was making a significant acquisition in Australia. The office there was relatively small, and so they asked if anybody wanted to move there. And I thought it sounded like a great idea, like a long vacation. So my husband and I packed everything up, carried it back down those 3 flights of stairs to take it out of our apartment, and moved to Perth for a few years. And while we were there, we then got the chance to move to Singapore, where one of our U.S. clients was making a significant acquisition. And so we worked there for a couple more years, and then finally moved back to Houston probably 4 years later. And once we settled back in Houston, we had 2 girls who are now 13 and 9. In fact, today is my oldest daughter's 13th birthday. So happy birthday to her. I'm saying that so that you guys can all wish her happy birthday too. And then in 2007, I became a partner at PwC and had the opportunity to work in our San Francisco office for a couple of years. So we packed up the whole family. The girls were babies, and we moved to California for a few years. And now I've been back in Houston for 5 years, and I think we'll be staying put at least for the next few years. I never really intended to stay in public accounting for 25 years. I think it's pretty unusual, especially these days, for somebody to have the same job for their entire career. And 25 years in, I don't have any plans to change jobs now, so I think I'm pretty committed. But I think it's probably useful for you guys to all know, when I started this, I had no intention of working in public accounting for more than a couple of years. And I think that's how most people start out. It's a great experience. You get to see a lot of different clients. You can do a lot of different things. So I thought I'd stay for a couple of years, and then I'd move on to something else. So at the 3-year mark, I started kind of looking around and talking to my friends who had left PwC to see what they were doing, talking to my clients about what they were doing. And, while they all liked their jobs and were doing interesting things, none of those things just really sounded like what I wanted to do. So I figured, I'll stick with public accounting for a few more years. And then maybe once I'm a manager, I'll look around and see what there is. So I did that probably every 2 or 3 years for a solid 10 years. And then I think it was after we'd had our first daughter, I was trying to figure out really what I wanted to do in life. So I sat down one night at the kitchen table, made a list of pros and cons, writing them all out. I'm taking this very seriously. And my husband starts looking over my shoulder and laughing while I'm doing this. And I was a little offended. It's like, I'm trying to make a really important life decision here. And he was laughing at me. So I stopped and I asked him what was so funny. And he looked at me and said, the things on your cons list have nothing to do with your job. Those are things that happen to everybody at work every day. So unless you want to just stop working altogether, you probably need to figure out a different list of cons, or, figure out something else to do. And when he said that, it's like this light went off, and I realized that I loved what I was doing every day. I just always thought there might be something better out there. So at that point, a solid 10 years into my public accounting career, I decided this is what I was going to do, and I was going to stick with it a little longer. And I'm glad I did, because my job is just completely different every day. So, yesterday I was at a client site all day. I had one of our interns, who, by the way, was born after I started working here. She shadowed me for the day, and, she got to listen to me on conference calls with people and come to my client meetings, and, just a normal day, lots of talking. And she asked me lots of questions, and just really, I had a good time reminding myself of kind of how fun it is sometimes to do those things. Not a ton of fun, because I did eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the office with my audit team yesterday. And then today, since I'm in Houston, I had the opportunity to meet the Houston Astros CFO, who actually used to work with us, and he snuck the World Series trophy out of Minute Maid Park and a few blocks over here to our office. So I got my picture taken with the World Series trophy today, and that's why I'm wearing my orange colors. So, you know, I have no idea what I'll be doing tomorrow, but I'm certain it will be different than what I did yesterday and what I've done today. I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so maybe I'll pause here for a minute and turn it over to Jen to introduce herself, and then I think we'll get back to Angela and have some questions.
All right, so I'm Jen Notley. I think I wanted to start a little bit about, I'm really excited to be here with you guys today, talk a little about my career. My career is a lot more meandering than Jodi's, but we do share a lot of similarities in that I really like public accounting. And I know people don't hear that a lot because you hear about a lot of the hard work and the hours that you put in, but it is exciting and it's fun work. So I actually want to start talking about what I started to do in college, because I think it will speak a little bit to the opportunities that are available to you in public accounting. I went on a mission before I started the junior corps. And so when I got back, I had about 6 months before I was about to start the junior corps, so I was looking for a job. And it just so happened there was a woman in my parents' ward that had her own CPA practice. And so I had the opportunity to work for her, which was, sorry, I have a cold, so excuse me for a second. It was a really fantastic opportunity to see what different people do in accounting. And she had a career with a big firm and then decided to open up her own practice in Idaho Falls. And I learned a lot from her. It was a great experience. And she actually did offer me a job when I graduated, but I didn't want to live in Idaho Falls, which is not where I grew up. My parents moved there after high school. So I decided to continue with the junior corps, and then I did 2 internships while I was at BYU. The first actually was with the FBI, which was very cool and very exciting. So if that's something that is interesting to you, like being an agent with the FBI, then accounting is definitely an option for you. They only recruit from a couple different degrees. One is law, one is accounting, and then if you have a language specialty, and then they lump every other major into the other career. So accounting is definitely high on their list of people that they recruit. So I spent a summer in Washington, D.C., having a lot of fun, actually working in their general ledger unit, which wasn't exactly agent work, but still lots of people with accounting degrees there doing things that support the agents as well. Ultimately, I decided that even though I think the idea of being an FBI agent is very cool, it wasn't necessarily a career for me because you are moving around every 3 years and don't really get a say on where you want to live. So my second internship was actually with KPMG in the San Francisco office. I grew up in Colorado. My parents moved to Idaho Falls, but my mom is from California, and I love California. Always wanted to live there, so I decided that's where I was going to move. So I spent a summer there with KPMG. I really enjoyed it, and I decided to start work with them. I actually graduated in December, so I started in January of 1999. So it's been almost 20 years. Doesn't seem like that long. And I started working in their manufacturing, retail, and distribution group. So I worked on clients like Del Monte, a building maintenance company. Also, I had a wind power client. So lots of variety in the client. Working in San Francisco during that time was also when the tech boom was happening. So even in the San Francisco office, we had a lot of high-tech clients. CNET was one of the clients I worked on. And I really enjoyed actually high tech. So we had another office that was just down in the Silicon Valley in Mountain View, about 30 miles away. But I ended up transferring to that office just so I could work more on high tech clients. So I worked on Adobe was probably one of my biggest clients that I worked on. I enjoy software. I think they have a lot of challenging issues. One of my favorite things about public accounting is just you get to see so many different types of businesses and different companies, how they operate. You get to see what works, what doesn't work. You learn a lot about, especially in high tech, I got to learn about a lot of cool stuff that was happening because you have to understand their business. You have to understand what they're selling to make sense of their financial statements. So you get to delve into a lot of different details of a lot of different companies. Excuse me. So that was really exciting, and I really enjoyed that. I continued to work for KPMG until I had my first, well, actually until I got married. I love working for the big firms. I think there's a lot of advantage to it because you get world-class training, you work with great people. And like Jodi said, there's lots of opportunities to do lots of different things, and it's fun. It's really fun. So I did enjoy that, but ultimately it came to a point where I was ready to make a change. And so I left in 2002 to go work for a regional firm in the Silicon Valley. So a firm that had 5 offices just in Northern California. Well, actually just in the Bay Area, actually. And they focused mostly on privately held clients, which I liked. That was right after Sarbanes-Oxley had happened. So a lot of changes with public companies and a lot of different changes in the audits. Privately held clients was a lot different. And I think that and granted, big firms also do privately held clients as well, but our focus at that firm was specifically privately held clients, which doesn't necessarily mean small, but it just is different. And I really enjoyed that as well. So when I worked at that firm, I also worked on growers. Like, I learned a lot about grapes, grapevines. Also, I worked on manufacturing and also high tech. So we also had high tech, lots of startups. And because of the area I was living in, we also worked on venture capital. So I started to specialize a little bit in venture capital, which is also very exciting because not only do you get to learn about the companies that the venture capitals are investing, but you get to learn about how they value those investments, and it's very fun. So I did that until my first son was born in 2005, and then I decided that I didn't want to work part-time. I wanted to stay home with my son. So this is where things get interesting, because my husband was also going back to school and working part-time. So I basically went to my partner and I said, listen, here's what I want to do. Let's make it work. And he said, okay, let's make it work. So we did. And I just said, I want to work this percentage of time. And I realized that it can't be this day and that day only, or only answering calls that day. So really just learning how to be flexible and making something that works for my family as well as the firm. And it worked. So I did that until my second son was born for 2 years. And after that, I decided that I still wanted to work, but I didn't want to have to commit so many hours per week or whatever the schedule was. So I went on a contract basis. And I was really lucky in that I had a firm that was willing to work with me. Back then, we didn't have all electronic work papers. We were kind of moving that direction. But they had a van that would drive between the offices and deliver papers. And they actually would stop at my house if they needed to, which was fantastic. Eventually, we moved to electronic work papers, which was very helpful. But at that point, I was basically a senior manager. So I did technical reviews, which I could mostly do from home. Occasionally, I would go out to clients, which I still like to do that as well. When I was working part-time, I said so many hours were at home and so many hours would be at clients. It just kind of depended on what was needed. So when I was working at contract basis, it was almost exclusively just reviews and from home. So that worked really well for our family until kind of I felt like it was time for a change. And so at that point, I could see kind of what was going on at the firm, and it wasn't really a good fit anymore. And so I just decided to stop working as a contractor. All along that time, I had picked up a few clients, a few friends that asked me to do their tax returns. So I was still doing tax returns and kind of keeping involved with my career. And then I basically stopped doing any audit work for about 6 years. And in that time, my family moved to Sacramento. I had another child. And then once my daughter started kindergarten, which was about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to start working again. Excuse me. So I contacted a colleague who I had worked with at KPMG. He also came out of the accounting program at BYU and was now in Sacramento. Since none of my career was here in Sacramento, I couldn't call my old colleagues. So I contacted him and said, hey, I'm interested in doing this, and I know we've worked together. And he said, well, let's see what we can make it work. So I've been working for the past this is my third busy season working for them as an independent contractor, which is fantastic because I just get to pick my assignments and say, hey, I have some time this week. Do you have a job for me? And they gave me a computer with their software, and I'm able to get electronic work papers and call clients and do everything from home. So it's been really a really fantastic opportunity. And, you know, as my children get older, I talked to them, I said, hey, I'm interested in more of a long-term plan. So like Jodi, you know, you always kind of see what's out there and what the opportunities are. You always want to be flexible. It's good to have a plan, but also to be flexible because you never know what's going to happen. While I was working part-time, my husband actually was working as a contract recruiter. And at one point, the company came in and said, hey, we're having a hiring freeze. And that was it. Like, there went our income. So you never know what's going to happen. So you kind of have to be flexible. But it's been a really great career. I feel like I've had a lot of opportunities to kind of pick my own career path and do whatever I wanted. And when I started thinking about going into accounting, everyone always said tax was super flexible, but I did not like tax at all. I just couldn't do it. Like, I thought managerial was really interesting, and I thought financial accounting was really interesting. And I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but you know, you got to like what you do. So I picked a career that I liked, that I thought I was good at, that I could be successful at, and have been able to make it flexible. And even in the current contracting that I'm doing, I've met other people who've had flexible careers. So one lady I was speaking with, she was the CFO of the company that I was doing the review on, and we ended up talking kind of offline a little bit, and she had a baby and she was working as a contract CFO because that's what she wanted to do. So there are lots of opportunities to be flexible in your career plan. And that's kind of been my experience so far. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Angela so she can tell us about her career.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Jen and Jodi, for setting the bar so high for me to try to explain my story so succinctly. But so I'm a little bit north of where Jen was. I'm up in Tacoma, Washington right now. I grew up actually in Gig Harbor, which is, if anybody's ever watched that video in physics where the bridge that looks like the Golden Gate twisted and fell down, my grandfather shot that video, and I actually run over the new version, a much more stable version of that bridge almost every morning. So anyways, it'd be a little windy and chilly at this time of the year. But I grew up in Gig Harbor, and I went to school primarily in Tacoma. I actually went to Catholic school, so I have the great, you know, plaid skirts for days, all that fun stuff. And my senior year of high school, it rained. Seattle lived up to its reputation, and it rained 90 days straight, or some record that I think we actually beat last year, believe it or not. Anyways, so I was sitting there with an offer letter to go to University of Washington or to go to Santa Clara University. I was like, well, I am going to the sunshine because I am done with this rain. And I figured I could always come back home. Family was a big thing for me. My dad was one of 11, so my last name says TR11 is how you spell it, and that's literally how many siblings he grew up with. So I just had cousins and kids and chaos at every point in my life, and I kind of just needed to go away to school and to be able to really appreciate and truly understand what's really important in life. Because when you're a high school senior, you know, you're just trying to find your way. So I went down to Santa Clara, and I think my dad instilled the fear of just do not go longer than 4 years because it's so expensive down there. And I was like the first child with younger brothers coming up very, very quickly. So do think about family planning. Don't try to have all your kids in private high school or college together because it's ridiculously expensive. It's even worse now. But anyways, so I crammed as many classes as I could because I knew that I went down there and I knew I wanted to major in business. My family has a family business. We even have an office in Salt Lake City. It's super sexy. It's pest control. So if you want to know how to prevent bed bugs or deal with rats or mice or ants or anything like that, I can totally help you with that. My initials, I'm Angela Nicole Treleven. So I'm Ant. My brother is Rat. It's even worse. He works in the business. So anyway, we have this family business. And so all I'd ever been exposed to really was, since it's family business, didn't need an audit, but everybody with family businesses talks about tax. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go into accounting. It's the language of business, and I'll study tax, and I'll go work for Sprague, which is the name of the company. But I really started to realize how big the Bay Area is and how many opportunities are out there. And then I started talking with all the firms, and I figured out, oh my goodness, I need to get all these 225 credits because I wanted to do it all in 4 years, not to go that fifth year. because Washington, I knew at that point I wanted to go back up to Washington to be a CPA, and California didn't have those same requirements. So I took as many leadership classes as I could. I took all the accounting elective courses as well, just to really say, hey, I'm down here. They're not actually charging me more money for these extra units. I might as well get the benefit of this education and this wealth of knowledge that's all right there. So I started talking with the big four accounting firms, because that's where this class was going towards. And I started to understand that there's way more out there than just tax. And so I started to get really curious about this whole audit thing, and what does that mean? And I realized at that point, even though there's sometimes this stereotype that accountants are boring, or that we go to work and we just 10 key all day long, that is absolutely not what we do. 99% of my day, especially this week, and I think Jodi hit on it as well with all the different interactions she's had with people, it's people management, it's managing their different personalities. And so I started to realize that I didn't want to go to the same place every day. That wasn't necessarily for me, but I wanted to try all these different things. So back when I was interviewing, it was right just before the Sarbanes-Oxley legislation came out, and the first year of SOX or 404. And so people had jobs with Andersen on campus, and then they didn't, and then they were absorbed by firms, and it was kind of all this chaos going on. But I checked that box because I knew at that point in time I wanted to go to Seattle. So I started interviewing with the firms, and this, for those of you that do start to think about a career in public accounting, when you seem stressed out that 1 week at BYU when all the interviews happen perfectly in order, remember that back when I did it, it was kind of chaos. Every firm interviewed at a different time. And I found myself as a senior in college having status on Alaska Airlines because I was flying to Seattle all the time to go to all these different interviews. But anyways, it was, I guess that also piqued another interest that I have, which is travel. So I ended up selecting Ernst & Young to start my career, and I thought for sure all my friends were in the Bay Area. They were going to work on tech companies, and I was going to Seattle, and I was going to work on forestry and fishing and all those other type of stereotypical products up here. But as you guys all know, Amazon's taking over the world. We have Microsoft, Expedia, etc. And I started working right away on Expedia, and it was being purchased. It was buying other companies. It was just so dynamic. And I worked on a whole bunch of other public companies. And I really then ended up specializing in public companies because I grew up as an audit staff dealing with SOX with really very little, I don't want to say no guidance, but everybody was trying to figure it out together, all the firms. And so I was deep in the trenches as a staff working through that. And so I just kept challenging myself saying, wait a minute, am I growing every year? Because yes, walkthroughs and tested controls are not always the most exciting thing to have to step through and to audit through, but you really understand process. And so while people may say, oh, you're an auditor, no, I'm a process champion, right? I can see processes end to end and really understand how can we optimize this? How can we take out the manual intervention where the errors can happen? What could go wrong? Where does it go wrong? How are we going to build in controls to mitigate that so that when we push an accounts payable invoice through, it's going to be simplistic. So I know it sounds a lot like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, you're not actually doing technical accounting, but it really was, it's learning all parts of the business. And when you're in audit, you really do get to see everything. So I'll diverge for a little bit. My brother, Mr. Rat, he works for our family business, and as part of succession planning, which is something else we have to deal with, is he went to go get his executive MBA. And my mom and my other brother and my dad and I flew out for his graduation. My mom was asking my other brother and I, as we're sitting in the airport, would you ever go back and get your MBA? And my baby brother, and we just tried to get him to graduate in 5 years. And I was helping him with all his algebra because math was not his thing. And he's like, Mom, come on. There's no way I'm going back to school. And I sat there and I reflected on it a little bit. And I'm not professing in any way, shape, or form for all the professors that are on this call to have an MBA. But I reflected on it and I was like, wait a minute, I get to see legal and how they deal with cases and the accounting for it and strategies to defend those cases. I'm working with operations, I'm working with accounting, SEC reporting, I'm going out, I'm touring plants. I really get this whole picture of business. So I'm not saying I have an MBA, but you really do, sales and marketing. Oh my gosh, those companies that have these great promotions that sends accountants into tailspins trying to account for it. So you really start to think about all the different parts of business by working on these bigger companies. And so I just kept challenging myself. Is my resume growing? You know, you get those 4-year itches every once in a while. 4 years in high school, 4 years in college, 4 years in public. Oh, you get to the next level with promotion. Am I bored? You have to kind of do the pros and cons list. And Jodi said that. I can absolutely relate to it. But I got some great advice from the former chief accounting officer at Expedia. And she used to be in public accounting and then went into the industry. And she said, you know, as long as your resume is growing, keep going at it. You know, if you start to feel stagnant or unhappy, then question it. So I took her advice pretty strongly. And then I kept getting PCAOB inspected, because I remember I worked on public company jobs, which meant the PCAOB chases around auditors. And if you think being audited is super fun, try being audited by auditors of auditors. So anyways, it was torturous. And that's actually one of the PCAOB inspections was really painful, not because we had done a poor job as an audit firm, but we just had a challenging client with very challenging controls to prove. And I literally had a trip to China planned with my husband the following week, and we were going to China to run the Great Wall half marathon. But that PCAOB inspection sent me into the world of running marathons to deal with the stress and solving process issues and controls. And so I changed at the last minute and ran my first marathon on the Great Wall in China, came back and eventually ran another one in Utah, and thought at the bottom of Big Cottonwood Canyon, I was never going to run another one, even if I qualified for Boston. Of course, I crossed the finish line, qualified for Boston, and that thought never crossed my mind again. But anyways, so it's you got to think of this career as a marathon, right, and a journey, and it can take so many different turns. And eventually, my big client went out for bid, and the firm said to me, "Oh, you're so great at PCAOB inspections. Why don't you help with our national office?" And I just thought, wait a minute, I want to do something where I'm helping make things better on the front end, as opposed to dealing always with the past. And so at that point in time, my husband and I decided we were going to relocate down to Tacoma. We were living in Seattle at the time. And when I say living in Seattle, I mean my husband is a pilot, so he's gone 4 nights a week. And I was traveling because my client was so international that I flew, I think, 150 times in a year, which that worked for Justin and me. We didn't have kids. We had this awesome house in Seattle that we were at 1 night a week. I'd still do laundry at my parents' house on the weekend because we'd spend time with family. But he'd fly to wherever I was on his days off and come meet me. And it sounds super romantic, but there's the pros and cons for the whole thing. But I think back to Jen's point, right, is flexibility. You've got to figure out a way to just make it work with your situations that you're in. And number one thing, you have to be grounded in what are your priorities. And my husband and I, our priorities are family. We love to travel. We love the Seahawks, and we also love running. So, you've got to come grounded with those, and then you can fill in and find. There's so many opportunities. The employment rates for accountants are so low. I know this because now I'm at True Blue. I'm leading internal audit, and I'm trying to build out a team, and it's tricky to find the right resources. But accountants are so incredibly valuable. So with that, I'm gonna pause here because I think we've done all the introduction pieces. But and there was 3 main topics that were really submitted from the beginning, and it was explain the avenues that a career in accounting can take. And it really, I think we've answered that question. If we haven't, by all means, please go ahead and submit a question through the Zoom box with Lexi to get that to us. But maybe you guys, maybe Jodi and or Jen could go through how you balance work and life. I've explained that my husband and I, we don't have kids, but we have date nights and challenges with flight delays and all that fun stuff to manage through. But how do you balance it? Are there tips and tricks? Is it Google Calendar? Is it great communication? Is it FaceTime? What is it? So I'll let either one of you go first. It looks like Jodi came off of mute, so maybe she'll start first.
I'll go first, and then Jen can share all her secrets because she probably has lots more. I think people talk about work-life balance and managing things, and it's so different. Everybody's definition of flexibility and what they want is different, right? And I think you'll hear that as we go through this. And I actually made a couple of notes because I wanted to make sure that I covered kind of what I'll call the things that I wish I would have figured out earlier in my career around how to be flexible and how to manage. So I have always worked full time, even when my kids were little. A lot of my friends didn't do that. Some of my friends who took a couple of years off when their kids were younger, had friends who went part-time, whatever. But for me, it worked for my husband and I, for me to work full-time and him to take some more responsibilities. So I think, I would say the keys to my flexibility and my work-life balance probably different than everybody else's. But I think mine are a strong support system. I could probably do it all on my own, but I think I would be very unhappy and exhausted. And then focusing my time on a few specific priorities, figuring out what those things are, what my values are, what the things are important to me, and focusing in on those. And if something doesn't align with those, it doesn't need to happen. If it doesn't help me reach my goals or energize me, then it just doesn't need to happen. And also taking time for myself. I think a lot of times women and we put other people before ourselves, and we're the last ones to get taken care of. And so I really focus on taking time for me, both at work and at home. So my support system starts with my husband. I'm very blessed to have someone who not only does his fair share. I think he probably does a little bit more than his fair share, but we're not going to tell him that. But he actually enjoys, taking the kids to school. We have 2 girls. He learned how to braid hair so he could do their hair for them in the mornings. So he gets them ready for school in the mornings so I can go into the office early. So cooks, which I think I didn't even know that when we got married. I learned that later. And I think that is also something that it's just one less thing that I have to worry about, and we balance it out. And he loves cooking, so it works out really well. We also have a babysitter who picks up the girls most days after school, helps them with their homework. That way, when I get home, I get to do the fun stuff. I don't have to deal with algebra and things like that. I can, hang out with them, read books, maybe watch a show, tuck them into bed at night. So, for me, that support system and knowing that there are people who can help me do things is really important to me, because I want to spend time with my family, but I don't have to be there for every single thing. And I don't think they need me there for every single thing. They need me there for the really important stuff. And then focusing in on those things that really fit with my goals and my values. I think early in my career, I did everything that anybody asked me to do. Somebody said, hey, you should try this, this is a great opportunity for you at work, volunteer for these things, you'll get to meet new people. And I said yes to everything, and I was stretched way too thin, I was stressed out, and I hadn't learned how to say no yet. And so I think learning to say no was really important to my career progression, for me to figure out, what are those things that are really important to me, and then making sure that everything I was doing fit into those goals. So for example, at that time, I tried to focus my efforts then on the community. And I spent a lot of time volunteering with Junior Achievement and some other organizations. And I found that to be really satisfying, a fun thing to do outside of auditing. A lot of my clients also volunteered with Junior Achievement. And so we were all kind of going to the same things together. So it was something that benefited me at work and also made me feel good about what I was doing. And that eventually led to me really being known for that in our office. And I think, led to other opportunities for me. So it wasn't volunteering for every single thing. I just picked something that I really liked and I focused in on it. I also practice saying no at home. I don't let my kids sign up for every single activity they want to do. I try to get them to, be a little bit underscheduled so we have family time together. And, I don't go to every single soccer game. We sit down with the schedule and I agree with the kids which ones I'm going to be at. That way, when I'm at those, I'm really focused and I'm present. And when they're, when I'm busy with things or whatever, then I'm not there. I'm at work. And I think that helps them understand that you need to balance things out, and there are competing priorities in life, and how you can still get the things done that you want to do. And then, I got to say, even with a strong support system and saying no to a lot of things, I'm still really busy every day. And I think Jen and Angela are probably in the same boat. There's a lot of things going on every day. There's long hours. If there's not long hours at the office, there's long hours at home, because there's always a lot of things to be done. So I schedule time for me. It's in my calendar. It sounds a little corny, but there's time in my calendar for me to do yoga. There's time in my calendar for me to get to bed at night so that I get a good night's sleep. And there's time in my calendar for me to just relax and get a little bit of quiet time. Because it's important to me to set a good example for my girls so that they can see, they can do whatever they want to do when they grow up, and they can do it without being stressed out and frazzled and run ragged. That they can really, if they want to stay home with their kids, they can do that. If they want to have a career, they can do that. If they want to split that up half and half, they can do that too. They just, that they can do whatever it is they put their minds to. And so I make sure they're involved and they understand when I'm scheduling time for myself, when I'm doing things for me, and how I make decisions about where I'm going to spend my time. I think it's important for them to learn it. I think it's still a little bit lost on my 9-year-old, but I think my 13-year-old is starting to understand it. And one of the reasons that I have really enjoyed public accounting is the level of flexibility that it gives me personally. So even though I've always worked full time, my work does not have to be done between 9 and 5 every day. So, I might take off early to go to a soccer game or go to the school play. Or today I'm going to leave not too long after this so I can pick my daughter up for school and take her out for ice cream since it's her birthday. And then I can finish what I need to do later on after the kids are in bed, which is probably the most important thing to how I feel like I'm not too frazzled and things are managed, is that my children are always in bed by 8 o'clock at night, so that I have at least a couple of hours to myself to do whatever it is I want to do, or have dinner with my husband quietly. That to me is really important to how we've organized our lives. So maybe I'll stop there and pass it over to Jen so she can tell us how she manages everything.
Well, I was thinking about this all morning, because as if any of you have kids, and some of you are probably too young, but when you have a baby, you kind of figure out their schedule. It takes a couple months and you get in a groove, and then all of a sudden the schedule changes. And I think life is just like that. Like once you figure it out, it changes. And so having a life balance, because even though I haven't worked full time in a really long time, and right now my schedule is pretty flexible, I also actually work for a gym. I teach group exercise classes, 6 classes a week. So that's kind of my time, but it's also a job. So it's kind of this weird mix. But no matter what you're doing, life is busy, and it's a challenge to manage it, whether you have callings at church, or your exercise, or your family, your parents. My in-laws live down the street, and they're getting older, and we have to make more time to help take care of them. So there's always things that happen in life as it changes. So I kind of made some notes about 3 things that I think help me, and I'm not always stress-free. I'm kind of a high-stress individual, but things that I try to do. Sorry about that. The first thing is, and these things apply kind of long-term and short-term, like on a daily basis versus a long-term. And the first thing is, really, you have to be a good planner. And whether that's a long-term planning strategy, like this is what I want to get out of life, this is what I want to get out of career, this is what I want to get out of this year, this is what I want to get out of today or this week. I grew up in a family with 6 kids, and the memories I have of weekly family council was really just like family scheduling for like all day long to try and get us where we needed to go. And I think that kind of is deeply rooted in me, of like, you got to have a plan to get things to where you go. But then the number 2 thing is you got to be flexible with that plan. And I think I alluded to this earlier Whether that's, okay, my plan was I was going to work from 12 to 3, but somebody's sick. So I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to have to alternate my plan, or vice versa. I was going to be with my kid, but I have an emergency come up. I'm also the treasurer of my kids' soccer club. So yesterday we had to file 1099s, and I had people not getting me information until yesterday morning. So then I was like, okay, I guess I'm spending my day doing 1099s. I did not plan to do this today. But you got to be flexible with the plan, and things happen that aren't your fault. And then in order to make that happen, though, you have to be open and communicative. And whether that's with the people that you work with or the people at home, like for instance, for me, when I said, listen, I want to make this schedule happen, but I realize that it's going to take a lot of flexibility, a lot of communication, and you have to find people that are willing to do that with you. And also at home, right? No person can manage the house by themselves. Your kids have to be involved. Your spouse has to be involved. And I think there's a good balance between saying, okay, what things are you willing to take on that's your thing that you're going to own, but I'll help you with you. I'll help you with it if you need, right? So you got to kind of own certain things in your family, in your job, but then be flexible enough to kind of move those things around as things come up. So that's kind of like what I was thinking about. I think that kind of covers how I try to manage my life, is to be really prepared and to try to have a structure, but also be flexible. And I second everything that Jodi said, because I think you need to have time for yourself, and you need to have a good support system. And everything that she said, I think is also really important. Angela, you want to add to that?
I'll keep it short so that we do get to the next question, but absolutely, I'd say one of the things that I wished I would have realized earlier in my career was that I've got to take care of myself first. And I think that's probably a little bit just of female culture in general. We're givers, we're nurturers, we try to help others, and we place them ahead of ourselves. But it finally dawned on me, I think probably not until I was a manager, that I've got to take time for myself so that I can help others. Like if I'm not pulled together in my personal life, how in the world am I going to be successful in my professional life, right? Helping others. Because number one, again, being grounded with the priorities, number one is for us, it's family. I'd say the other things that have really helped are FaceTime, given that I'm married to a pilot, and there was years that I traveled actually more than he did. I think I've worn out the speakerphone on my iPhone, so I now have to use my iPad. And it's ridiculous. Like I'll just leave him on the bedside table or whatever when I'm in a hotel room and I'm just working away or whatever. But I've told my team, look, you guys, there's going to be days where I work longer because Justin's gone. He's on a trip. Why not, but then I'm going to definitely hold and stick to some of my grounds with the other commitments on the nights that he is home. So that, and I totally taught him how to do laundry a long time ago. He wanted to buy these fancy red washing machines, and I'm like, well, that's fine because there's a closet and they can be hidden away. But he was motivated to do laundry, and she with the most clothes totally does not have to do it. If he has fewer, he has to do it thinner. So anyways, those are my tips there. So I think we should probably transition to the next question, which was, how do you manage your interaction with male colleagues that may be overly aggressive or undermining your efforts or career? I don't know, did anybody raise your hand if you have a group you want to go first, but I can, if that would be helpful. I work now at True Blue, and we're a staffing company. It's been primarily a fairly male-dominated industry, and then I mentioned our family business as well, right? A lot of males, but really working in terms of promoting women in terms of, I wouldn't even call it that. I had a great conversation with one of my friends who actually is a mom who went to BYU, who has 4 kids, and we were running at ODARC 30 this morning, and we didn't call it just the women's agenda. We were calling it the family agenda, right? And working for companies that are family friendly, whether that means maternity leave or paternity leave, right? But it's really holding your ground and really standing up for what you believe in, as opposed to, again, putting everybody in front of you. You've earned it. You've got the credentials. Own it with confidence. Sometimes that confidence, I'm 5'2" on a good day, comes with a really great pair of stiletto heels to help, but just own it, right? Be confident in what you've got. That would be my advice. And humor does help you get a long way. So Jodi, you want to go next? And then maybe Jen?
Yeah, I can go next. And when we were preparing and I looked at this question, I guess I would say I'm fortunate that I don't think I've had any really overtly difficult situations. But again, like Angela, I'm working in the oil and gas industry. It's a male-dominated industry. Public accounting per se is, at least when you start, is about 50-50. I think, last year our statistics were there were actually 51% of the accounting graduates were female. But that starts to narrow off as people progress and as people move out of the workforce to stay home with kids and things like that. But I do think part of managing those things is, if someone says something that's overtly offensive to you or undermining to you, direct confrontation is probably never the way to get through it. Because somebody who says something like that, you're not going to change their mind by directly confronting them. So a little bit of humor, a little bit of just letting some of those things go by and thinking about them later, I think goes a long way. There are also, I find, as I've progressed in my career, there's a lot of benefits to being a woman. There's a big push for diversity. There's high demand at a lot of my clients to have more diverse teams. Executive boards are looking for more diversity in their boards that are mostly dominated by older white males. And so, I try to focus on, there are probably a lot of benefits that I can get out of this, where if I am equally qualified as someone else, it might give me a leg up, which I'm going to focus on that, and maybe pass it over to Jen to see what else she might have to add.
So I was thinking about this question. I feel like I've been really fortunate as well in that I've not had that kind of interaction with others. But here's what I think is important to think about. Every company or every firm that you go to has kind of a personality. And so as you're interviewing for jobs, it's important to find people that you like, people that you fit with, people that you click with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. And, when you find that firm that has the personality that you feel fits with you, you need to have those connections, a mentor, at least one at your company and probably one outside of your company. So if a situation happens, you have someone to talk to about it. It doesn't have to be a woman, but that's a good idea also, to have a male and a female person that you can talk to about an uncomfortable situation, someone at your firm and someone outside of your firm that can give you perspective on how to handle that situation. And I think, just making sure that you find a good culture fit where you have people that you can talk to, because even if you're in a good culture fit with a lot of great people, there are bad eggs, right? And it happens, and everywhere you are, there's going to be a bad egg, and there's a potential for a bad situation. But just making sure you do, again, have that support system of people that you can go to with your specific issue.
Okay. Hey, Lexi, are there any questions that are in the queue? I don't see any on the screen, but I'm not a Zoom technology expert here.
Hi, yeah, I don't think we have any questions.
Okay. Well, I think we're right at the top of the hour here, and I guess if I could do a little bit of conclusion here, I just wanted to say thank you for those of you that listened in, for hearing our stories, and hopefully this has really helped you understand that accounting is not just working 80 hours a week in busy season, or that it's only working in tax because that's the only way you can have a family and have it all or balance it. And that, that I would hope that the messages you take away from this is that the world is really your oyster for a career in accounting, and you can really take it so many different directions. I mean, the CEO and CFO of the company that I work for now, they were accountants that went into public accounting, moved into internal audit, and have obviously moved up the chain. So the world really is your oyster. There's always so many opportunities. don't just say, oh, it doesn't fit this mold. Say, how can we make it work? And find companies or firms that have that type of culture, because they're the ones that are going to be able to help support you through there. They're going to want you to be happy in your personal life. They'd rather have you be working with them if you're happy in your personal life and getting the fulfillment that you need, rather than leaving altogether. One of the most expensive items on a P&L is turnover, and people are very dynamic. So got to have that flexible mindset, and it's a two-way street. Not every day is it going to work out perfectly. There'll be ups and downs, but really just embrace it, and make sure you're focused on that longer term vision. And those little pitfalls will seem like less bumps in the road. They'll seem smooth by it when you look in the rearview mirror.
Well, we just want to thank everyone for participating, particularly our presenters. We know that you are super busy, and so we're super grateful that you took the time to share with us your insights. And I know just listening to this, I learned a lot, and I'll be better off in my career. And if anyone has any additional questions, don't hesitate to email byuwsoa@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to answer those. And I think that concludes it. So thanks everybody for participating.